Welcome back to Fresh Take, and Fresh Take is brought to you by Hooper Law Office. Call Peter Harbach and Sarah Kahns at 1-800-794-5548 for your elder law and estate planning needs. Hooper Law Office, providing a pathway to your legacy. Well, big thanks to Michelle Devangese filling in for Josh Duclo, as he'll be back for Monday's show. But now on to our second guest host for this Friday, October 12th. We head to Holly McPhoebe. How's it going, Holly?
Good. How are you, Zach?
Doing pretty well. Just trying to stay warm.
Yeah, exactly. I know when I look out this window, I'm like, no, it's kind of cloudy out. But it's kind of cool that you have a window here. So
Get to look at it at least.
Yeah, right. At least you have a window. So my name is Holly, and I do the Recovery Talk podcast. And I host that, which you can also find that on Facebook or Spreaker or pretty much anywhere you can find any podcast. And today I kind of wanted to talk about addiction and recovery, but most importantly, I wanted to talk about like our youth and how important that prevention is in our youth, you know, and like it's hard to understand addiction and to understand what other people are going through. But at the same time, you don't need to understand all the ways to be loving. So first, Michelle, I was listening to their show before, and I thought they did an awesome job. And I love what they do over at Apricity. And the transitioning stage is what they talk about is so important for people in recovery and people who are, you know, struggling with addictions and that whole transitioning. And I just thought pretty much everything they had to say was, you know, very on point. So anyways, about me, I am tomorrow actually celebrating 5 years clean and in recovery, which is kind of cool because that Josh asked me to do the show today. I'm like, I want to say 5 years, but it's technically not till tomorrow. But that's really cool. And for me, I'm turning 27 this year. And a lot of people, like when I tell them that I'm in recovery or whatever, you know, a little bit about my story, they're like almost at the point where it's hard for them to, they'll say like, oh, I would have never imagined that. And I'm like, well, that's a good thing, kind of, because I wasn't really going for that look today. I was kind of going for like a bohemian or, you know, more of a businesswoman outfit. But if you do want to hear my full story, it is on my podcast. It's on Recovery Talk Podcast, and, you know, you can just search for us on Facebook. The first season I did for Recovery Talk Podcast was really cool because I interviewed a lot of people in recovery. Because I think a lot of people don't always know that other people are and, like, kind of what their story is. And for me, I'm very intrigued in, like, other people's story and, like, stories. And I have, like, you know, an NFL player, a comedian, and, like, people talking about their stories. And it's just very interesting. So if you ever want to take a listen. And also the next season that we're going to be doing is talking about important issues, and it's kind of like what I'm talking about today and talking about how important our youth is. The first half of the show, we're going to talk about how important our youth is and like prevention and some of those, you know, coping tools and how to identify at-risk youth and what we can do as a community to help them. Because I think a lot of times we know that there is such a struggle out there, but we might not know how to deal with it or know maybe the direction to point someone in. So I think they're very important topics. And then the second half, I'm going to have two people who graduated the drug court program, Jamie and Devin, and they're kind of just going to share their experience and kind of what drug court is. And now they have like drug courts, mental health court, heroin court, and they do a lot of different services. And for me as a taxpayer, I want to, you know, I'm and also a person in recovery. I want to kind of know what exactly, how is that helping our communities and what is it all about? Because it's kind of confusing, like drug court, just the whole name. It's almost kind of, I think it even has like a little stigma to it. But we're going to hear from them and hear their stories and their experience and kind of, you know, how drug court and heroin court and mental health court has impacted their life for the better. So a few things I want to talk about: prevention and how important our youth is. And like I said earlier, one of the big important message I like to give out to people is like, you do not have to understand to be loving. And I forget that all the time. And I don't know what the next person is going through, or I don't know their background, or say you can't relate to someone in addiction or in recovery or mental illness. But just as being a human, life is stressful and it's complicated. And some of us deal with stress better than others. And this can be for, a multitude of reasons. And like, instead of blaming other people or pointing the finger, I think that we can, as a society, take a look at us as a whole and what are we doing and what can, as an individual, we do better. Because my first reaction is to point a finger and say, it's our school systems, it's our government, it's our teachers, it's our families, it's that person that doesn't, know any better or whatever it is. And I think, some people have skills to train from home and other people have opportunities through school and church and YMCA and being a part of a group and having that other exposure is so important. And I know even for me growing up, I had all of those things and I still became an addict, and I'm an alcoholic and an addict. I have an addictive I just have a whole addictive personality. It doesn't really matter exactly what the substance is or what the thing can be, and I can replace that in a multitude of ways. And if I don't have coping skills, or I don't learn how to deal with life, or if I don't even get to know myself, I'm going to have a lot harder of a time. So a couple things I want to talk about first is how important those youth years are. And I was like looking up all the statistics, and I'm like, I have enough statistics. We could sit here for like 3 hours, but I kind of just pointed out some of the important ones, and that the U.S. has a 16 to almost 17% of teens that don't graduate high school. And a lot of the times we think it's maybe these communities or these people that, they're not our next door neighbor, or they're not people in our close connected community. But the biggest thing to remember is this country is a minority majority, and soon enough that minority will be the majority. And we need some of them to be great leaders. So as someone in the community, no matter what your position is or your status, or it doesn't really matter. But I think we all have that obligation that every child needs to have a positive influence, and I think and I'm not a first and foremost, I am not a substance abuse counselor. I don't have any degrees in the youth, and these are just all my opinions, which I'm open-minded to also changing them. And there are my opinions, and all I can say is this is my experience for someone who experienced drug addiction firsthand. I work here at the station, and I work in the traffic department, and I do billing, and I'm also here. Sometimes I get to do overnights on one of our sister stations, and I also DJ weddings. So my credentials are not in like substance abuse or psychology or any of that stuff. It's just my own experience, and also my intake on the community as well. And I just want to educate people, and for myself, I want to be educated, and I want to know. I'm always interested, and this is why I love Josh's show, is because I'm very interested in like what he has to say and his opinions, because like the show is fresh take, and we're getting a different take on things. So I think that's a big thing that we need to look into. So we're going to go ahead and take a break. I have a lot more information coming up about at-risk kids, and what we can do to help the community. So you're listening to Fresh Take on WHBY. We'll be right back.
Across the river 4 years ago.
Thanks for listening to Fresh Take. I'm filling in for Josh. And again, my name is Holly Mathebe. So what we were talking about a little earlier, I was saying how our youth and our teens are so crucial. And this is the time when their brains are developing and they're more at risk to taking risks. And they're also, those influences in their life are so crucial. And what I was getting at is for you and for me, even someone in the community trying to volunteer at a YMCA or, be a big brother or sister in our community. I would love to talk and, share my experience with kids in middle and high school. And my boyfriend, Neil, he has shared a story with a high school. And I think just one, and I think he has another one coming up. But either way, he has a very similar story, very, very similar background. But the bottom line is our youth and our kids of the future, they need tools, they need self-awareness, and we need them to be equipped. Positive self-image, we need to encourage creativity. We have to let them know that it's okay to have feelings and work through them. And I think that's a big one for me is I didn't even know how to totally identify them. And I could share some of my story here, but we don't have enough time for all my information and my story. But please go to Recovery Talk Podcast and give my story a listen. Another thing I like to tell people when I'm sharing my story is we tell others, I don't want you to cry. And it's like, no, we want them to cry. We want them to express themselves. Even as adults, we should be looking on how to be growing and changing, not just people who suffer with addiction or at-risk kids. So how do we do that? And I think looking at first we have to look at who are our at-risk kids. I think a lot of us know they're kids who are depressed. They have a family history of substance abuse. They come from abusive homes. They might have low self-esteem. They don't feel like they fit in. I like this one. They are in periods of transition. And that's kids, who are maybe going through a divorce, their parents, they're going through a transition. And I know for me, I had a bad car accident when I was 16. And looking back, my transition, dealing with that traumatic incident, I didn't know how to totally cope with maybe what I was going through. Another thing we can look at is kids who suffer with mental illness, their genetics, and we want them to have positive adult influences. So, okay, we're aware of all this information, and we know that it's an opiate epidemic, and we know that alcohol is such a problem in Wisconsin. But what can we do to change that? We had drug education, we had the DARE program. I know I had a PowerPoint on drunk driving in high school, and I remember that actually made me not want to drink and drive. But I didn't remember anything about substance abuse. I didn't know maybe I could have benefited from some more coping skills. The Just Say No campaign, that didn't really do anything. And I know in the last 20 years or so, the numbers of addiction and alcoholism are just rising. So now what do we do when we learn all this information? And prevention truly is key. And I know it sounds cliche, but how do we keep people from becoming addicted to drugs? They think I'll only do it once or I can stop at any time. And many people can, but there's always a few unlucky few that can't. And then it spirals out of control. So it's very difficult to help someone from taking drugs, but there are certain things that I think that we can do to help prevent drug addiction. And I don't think scare tactics, like if I told younger kids my story to scare them, I don't think that would necessarily, I think it might help, but I don't think that's where it's going to come from. And not every person who tries drugs or alcohol will become addicted to them. And many people drink alcohol socially without having a problem. So what are some of the things that we can do? And I think this is more of for like teenagers. They can learn to deal with life and life's pressures. They can learn to not give in to peer pressure. And I think developing close family relationships with their families and friends. When they have that guidance and support, it can make it easier for a person to deal with life and stay away from harmful and bad experiences. There's a lot of people that don't have a close family. I am very grateful that I do, and I am close to my family, and I had them through my whole recovery process, and, they just helped me so much and they don't, my mom and dad don't understand addiction, but they were there for me to help me get help. They were there for me to bring me to a sober living house. So, and a lot of people don't have that. And I know I mentioned in my story, a lot of the girls I work with in the jails, they don't have that kind of support to bring them to A to B to B to C. And I want to give credit where credit's due to all the people who, and how far that we have come as a society with all the help and resources. And we have came a really long way, but we also have a really long way to go. So big, important things to remember is helping those teens, being a positive influence in their life, developing healthy habits, helping them develop a self-esteem, volunteer and help these kids be a part of their life. They need to learn skills. They need to feel understood and accepted. They need to know what they can control and what they can't control. So going out of your way and making a difference to a cousin, a niece, a nephew, be a good influence in someone's life and help out, volunteer, because they truly, truly would benefit from it, because we really need to educate the community, but we also need to do our part as individuals to try to make our community as a whole a better place. And I think we're getting there. There's just certain things that, we could try a little more and do a little better. There's this one program I was looking at that they dive into personality testing, and they talk about 4 risky traits: impulsiveness, anxiety, sensitivity, hopelessness, and sensation seeking. And they give all these middle schoolers and high schoolers this test, and the ones who fall into these 4 categories, they do 2 90-minute trainings with them to try to deal with those certain traits that they have. Like for me, I am sense seeking. So like I want to experience like things maybe like at a high risk almost, or, like people want to jump off planes and do that kind of stuff. And I can see my dad's like that. He's a marathon runner, and he loves coffee. And me and him are always doing spontaneous, random things together because we're a thrill seeker. And that's kind of where I think that trait has came from. So, but there is a lot of good resources out there. And I think this program, it's not actually in America, but looking at those personality traits is a step at learning who you are, and especially being in adolescence is such a crucial time to learn about yourself and we're all so different and we all deal differently. So it's really good to learn your insides and how you cope with life. All right, so we're going to take a break. I do have Devin here from our drug court. We'll be back with Fresh Take. And again, my name is Holly. I'm filling in for Josh.
You're listening to Fresh Take from the Myron Construction Studio of WHBY, and Fresh Take is brought to you by Hooper Law Office. Find their offices in Appleton, Green Bay, or Oshkosh, or find them online at hooperlawoffice.com. For your elder law and estate planning needs, Hooper Law Office, providing a pathway to your legacy. And let's head back to our guest host filling in for Josh Duclos, and that is Holly McPheevy.
Hi, thanks for tuning in today. So we were talking, I have Devin here. Hi, Devin.
Hello.
So we were kind of talking about some of the prevention and some of the things that maybe we can do better or try to educate our young people when it comes to substance abuse and addiction. One of the things I did want to hit on as well is that I know I mentioned earlier when I volunteer and help some of the women that are in jail. They say that they don't have family members to maybe bring them to treatment or to bring them to sober living, that they don't really have those opportunities or they don't know where to go all the time. It's like they want to get help, but the fact of getting them to jail to treatment or from treatment to sober living. And I think as an addict or someone who struggles with substance abuse, at least for myself, I can say I struggle with impulsiveness. So I can see how that can, I can see how relapse can happen in that in-between time. Another thing I wanted to make sure I touched on was about half of our prison and jail inmates, they meet the criteria for substance abuse and alcoholism, and only 11% of them receive help or treatment in jail or prison. So you have all these people that need help, half of them, and only 11% of them get help. And as I said, as a taxpayer, what can we do, or where is this money going? Is there anything that we can do to maybe help that? And I think introducing the drug court programs and the mental health court and the heroin court kind of helps the alcoholic or the addicts struggling, help them transition into life, because it's not an easy transition. Because an inmate in prison, it can cost up to $50,000 a year. That's a lot of money. And I was looking at, this was a county in Texas. It costs them $30,000 a year to keep someone in jail, and it only costs them $700 for each person in the drug court treatment program. So looking at this, and my boyfriend Neil, he has also completed the drug court program, and I think it's, I know it's been around for a few years, but it's still kind of confusing on exactly what it is. And Devin, who I have here, has completed it, and he is doing really good. And, he's turned his life around. Not only he's not a repeating offender, he is someone in long-term recovery from drugs and alcohol. And Devin, when did you graduate from the drug court program?
I graduated in November of last year.
And what do you think is beneficial for the public to know about it? Because it is a little foreign, I think. I mean, I think people have heard about it, but what do you think what do you think would help them to know more about it?
I think the biggest thing is just the fact that they're not out there to basically, They're not out there to just do it for anyone. Like, they will help you as long as you want to help yourself. So in order to transition back into real life and continue living in recovery, a lot of addicts, including myself, just needed some direction. And they give you enough direction to move on, and they'll hold your hand through everything and give you as many chances as they see fit. But they're not going to sit there and let someone out of jail who continues to use and continues to do the addict behavior. So if you don't want to change your life, they'll send you back to jail and not give up on you, but they'll stop trying. As long as you're trying, they'll do everything in their power to help you live a life of recovery.
So it's kind of towards the people who want to change and who are willing to put the effort into it, because it is a lot of work. It
is, and they put in a lot of work themselves, and it's very evident when you go through the process.
Yeah, they put a lot of time into it, especially when it comes to, they do random drug testing throughout the week. Isn't it like on a daily basis almost?
Yes. Before 7 a.m. every morning, you have to call a number and see if you have to go drug test. So in the beginning, it's a little more rigorous, and you have to test about 4 to 5 times a week. And then throughout the time, it could drop to once a week, but then you could have a random week where you go back to 5 times a week. It was random. Every morning you had to call and be on top of it and be on time and have responsibilities, and that's one of the biggest things they drive home, is to have responsibilities and take care of them.
Mm-hmm. How long is the average length for someone in drug court?
The minimum is a year.
Okay.
There's 4 phases to it. Phase 1's also obviously very intensive. You meet with your case manager and your probation officer once a week. You go to court every week. Then as you go on to 2, 3, and 4, you go to court twice a week in Phase 2, 3 times a week, once every 3 weeks in Phase 3, and once a month in Phase 4. But you have to meet certain requirements to move up in phases, and you have to be very compliant. But like I said, the minimum's a year, but depending on how well you do and how much effort you put into it, like some people can be in it for 2 years, I've heard of some like 3 years, but it's all a matter of your willingness to change and your willingness to comply with their rules.
Mm-hmm. And they kind of help that process, and they give you goals and things to work towards. And they kind of want you, are they there to kind of help you get a job?
Yes.
I mean, they have requirements and stuff.
Yep, so they definitely push you to set goals, and they help you with life. Like, I went into it jobless, and I had a job within a week. They definitely push you to get on your feet and make your own money, to get your own place. Like, they'll hold you back if they think you need it, but other than that, they push you to go further and further. And like, even now that I'm graduated, like a year out of it, I still get phone calls from them, and I still see them once a month-ish, because they have like an alumni program. So even though you're not in drug court anymore, they still want to see you thrive, and they still want to see you continue to move on in life.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. I think it's so important for that whole transitioning phase and learning new coping skills, because for me, being in jail it helped me from not dying. You know what I mean? Like, from not maybe killing myself. I mean, taking me out of my environment. But I didn't learn any coping skills. I didn't learn how to, manage life.
Nope.
Nobody, and not saying that people with addiction should or shouldn't, but life is just hard for everybody. So we're all on this track to trying to get somewhere, to try to better ourselves. We all want to be happy, and I think that program, I really enjoy it. I like hearing about it, and I like learning more about it. And as I said, like, Neil's been through that program, and just when I first started dating him, like, seeing him, there was a lot he had to do, and there's a lot he couldn't do without permission. And I think we need that accountability, and I think we need to learn how to be responsible and productive members of society, because it's not someone who's been in addiction, we go down this path where we don't know how to do that anymore. That time frame is kind of gone. That learning curve, kind of like our brains didn't fully develop. So Devin, how long have you been in recovery now?
I've been clean 2 years and a couple months. August 22nd, 2016.
Congratulations. It's so funny. Anybody asking recovery, they know the date. That's how you know they're in recovery or not.
Yep.
They know their date. Do you think that most addicts and alcoholics can benefit from this program?
I think whoever's willing to actually get clean and stay clean would very much so benefit from it. There was, even in my year or so that I was in the program, there was multiple people who were willing to do it in the beginning to get out of jail, but then once they had to do all these responsibilities and actually follow rules for once in our lives, then they didn't last very long, and they ended up kicked out. So if you're willing, I believe anyone can benefit from it.
That's great. And I think sometimes our thinking is so cloudy at first. You just need a little bit of willingness.
Yep.
All right, we're going to take a short break. Thanks for listening to WHBY. We'll be right back. And we're back. Thanks for listening to Fresh Take. I'm filling in for Josh. And again, my name is Holly Mathiebe. I am the host of the Recovery Talk podcast. You can find us on Facebook or on Spreaker or wherever you find any of your podcasts. And if you don't listen to podcasts, you can find us on Facebook. So we've been talking about drug court. Earlier this hour, we were talking about prevention here with Devin, who completed drug court. So, Devin, a couple questions I had with drug court. You guys have court once a week?
Correct.
Okay. And what exactly goes on if you have it every single week?
Well, everyone goes in front of the judge every week, and he basically just asks how your week went, what you did for your recovery, like how your meetings with your case manager and your PO went. if you had messed up throughout the week, he talks to you about it, and they're very understanding in the fact that people miss drug tests at 7 a.m. because they overslept or they worked third shift and didn't get out of bed. And so if you do mess up in a week, they sit there and they listen to you. They hear you out. They can also tell if you're lying. So they don't automatically send you to jail. They'll hear you out and, listen to you and hear how your week went and give you any help that you may need at that point. They kind of there's a team, and they just direct their team on which way to help you next.
That is so cool. It's really cool to me that they have a whole team. Like, there's all these people there rooting for you that want you to do good.
Yeah.
And they use the resources that they have.
And they have a lot of resources, like the chief of police is on the team. There's a couple different doctors, and one from Aurora Bay Care. It's filled with POs and case managers. There's a retired chief of police that's on the team. And so they do use a lot of their resources specifically to help you, get a job, or they'll write letters of recommendation for you to get an apartment if you have bad credit or you have evictions. Like, they'll help you out and help you get a second chance because they'll put their name on the line for you as long as they see fit.
Oh, that's so cool. I think one thing I forgot to mention, that drug court is an alternative to jail and prison. So what were you looking at that they offered the heroin court, drug court for you?
I was not looking at much. It was my first offense. I got arrested for possession, and I was only looking at 6 months. But I took a plea deal where if I did heroin court and graduated and got off probation without any hiccups, then my felony possession would be expunged. So I was only looking at 6 months, but there's a lot of people who are looking at years and years over their head, and they take it and they run with it, and they just thrive because they're at a point of brokenness where there's no other opportunity, there's no other option. They're just willing to do anything but sit in jail for a lot of years, and so it is an alternative. So in the same route, you can get out of jail and try it, and like I said, not be willing and end up doing your time anyways.
So that is over their heads if they don't complete it or they do something or reoffend.
It is.
Time.
Jail's always over your head. They have a 90-day stayed sentence as well, so they can use that as they see fit. If you need to go to jail for a weekend because you messed up, or you needed to go to jail for a week, they can also do that. They'll send you to jail right out of court. Or if you get kicked out of the program, then you end up serving your full sentence anyways.
Very interesting. I just like the whole concept of the drug court and giving people a second option. I am an advocate for not putting people in jail all the time. I mean, we do need consequences and we need to follow the law, but we also are sick people that we need some kind of resources and help. And like I said earlier in the show today, there are a lot of resources, and there really has been a lot of improvement as society. But I think sometimes we're missing that by just putting them in jail. But as I said earlier, too, being a taxpayer, it's expensive. And if we can give people, we want them to transition, so we want them to, have goals and have jobs and, if they're a parent, be a parent to their family again. And I think the drug court program is a really, really good opportunity for that. And they also have veterans court, they have mental health court, heroin court, drug court. I mean, they're coming with courts out of the woodwork.
Yep, and so I've heard there's another one coming in for drunk drivings as well. There's going to be a drunk driving court that's in the works, I've heard.
That's really cool. And how long did it take you to graduate the program?
It took me a year and 2 months.
2 months. That's cool. So what is your life like now that you completed this program? What do you do to maintain your sobriety and stay on that path?
It is 100 times better. For me, it was, I moved here from Pennsylvania, so I didn't really have much, I don't have any family up here, and it was different for me. I was clean when I got here, and then I caught a charge, and then it was like, where do I turn next? And I mean, heroin court basically gave me that direction again. Now I'm living on my own. I got my own apartment. I play sports again.
Are you in the team in Oshkosh? Don't you play football?
Yeah, semi-pro football for the Fox River Raiders.
Cool.
So they're based out of Appleton, Oshkosh area.
Woo-hoo.
Yep. And so I get to pad up and play football again, which I haven't since high school. So, I mean, they always talk about living your best life, and I got a career job with the electrical union. That also, like, they pushed me to go that route because I was working dead-end delivery jobs for the year that I was in court. So, I'm definitely living a much better life. I get to stand in one of my buddy's weddings tomorrow.
Aww.
So, I have friends, like real friends. I have great things in my life, a great girlfriend.
Oh, that's so cool.
So, yeah.
Devin has an awesome story, and I want to point out that he is a Green Bay Packer fan from Pennsylvania.
Yep.
That's awesome. I really appreciate you coming here and sharing your experience and sharing how drug court has helped you.
Thanks for having me.
It was really great. And if you do want to know more or learn about my story or check out Recovery Talk Podcast, you can, like I said, you can do that on Facebook or on Spreaker. I just want people to know that more people will be caught up in the illegal drug trade this year, and thousands of children will learn that their mom or dad has been sent to jail for using drugs, and there's just too many parents that'll be notified that their son or daughter has died from a drug overdose. And it really doesn't have to be this way. I'm happy we could talk about these important issues. Even though it's really dark and it can be sad, there really is hope. In a society, we are doing better, but we do have an obligation to help our youth and make a difference. We can be a positive influence for some young person. We can learn that certain systems don't work. We can do our part to vote. We learn that certain systems do work, like drug court. Like, what if you weren't able to do that? Then the relapse, and, it's just that dead-end cycle that doesn't have to be that way. So most importantly, just try to be a kinder person, because you never know what someone is going through. And like I said, you don't need to understand what someone is going through to show compassion and to be loving. And if you have any opinions or any thoughts on this show, you can email me at recoverytalkpodcast@gmail.com. I was so happy to fill in today for Josh for a fresh take. Thanks for listening on WHBY.
Till the tears run down from my eyes, Lord, somebody, ooh, somebody, can anybody find me? Somebody to love.
Alexa, play hits from Queen.
Okay.
Somebody to love. Somebody.
With Amazon Music, a voice is all you need. Get tens of millions of songs. Download the Amazon Music app today.